Iran's deputy foreign minister has publicly declared Tehran is ready to move forward on a deal with Washington, but only if the United States compels Israel to halt its attacks in Lebanon, a condition that could stop diplomacy before it starts. According to Al Jazeera, Iranian Deputy Foreign Minister Khatibzadeh stated that Tehran is prepared to advance negotiations with Washington, describing diplomacy as the way forward. However, he explicitly conditioned any progress on the United States, ensuring Israel stops its attacks in Lebanon. This is the first senior Iranian public readiness signal following the recent U.S.-Iran military exchange. Analysts note the Lebanon precondition materially complicates the diplomatic track, given the depth of U.S.-Israel alignment. Whether Washington treats that condition as a starting position or a hard barrier will define whether this opening has any practical momentum. In a remarkable on-record statement, President Trump publicly claimed he killed one Iranian supreme leader-level figure and injured another, describing the surviving leader as, quote, a very brave man. This statement, reported by Telegram channel Middle East Spectator, represents an explicit presidential confirmation of decapitation strikes against Iran's top leadership. Trump's willingness to make these claims openly, rather than through government channels, is itself a significant signal. It shapes the diplomatic environment considerably. Any Iranian government now navigating a deal with Washington is doing so while publicly processing the killing of senior figures by the party it is negotiating with. Ukrainian President Zelensky publicly addressed Belarusian President Lukashenko directly, issuing what amounts to a one-week ultimatum. According to Telegram channel Infodef Italy, Zelensky warned that systems positioned along the Belarusian border, which he stated are being used to correct artillery fire against Ukrainian civilians, must be withdrawn within 7 days, or Ukraine will destroy them itself. This item is currently single-sourced and has not been independently corroborated in this reporting window, so it should be treated with caution. If accurate, it represents a significant escalation. A Ukrainian military strike on Belarusian territory would risk drawing Minsk formally into the conflict and could trigger Collective Security Treaty Organization consultation mechanisms. For the 6th consecutive time, Israeli defense forces have failed to capture Ali Al-Taher Hill in the southern Nabatieh district of Lebanon. According to Middle East Spectator, Hezbollah detonated an improvised explosive device against an advancing Israeli force, causing one vehicle to completely explode. Arabic-language source Bint Jbeil News corroborates the engagement, reporting fierce ongoing clashes and successive rocket strikes targeting Israeli troop assembly points in the area. The position reportedly features dozens of underground tunnels and multiple elevated firing positions. 6 failed attempts at a single fortified location signals that Hezbollah's defensive infrastructure in southern Lebanon retains meaningful operational resilience despite sustained Israeli military pressure. Despite active U.S.-Iran military conflict and ongoing sanctions pressure, Middle East Spectator reports that Iran exported approximately $1.6 billion worth of oil in just 4 days. This figure is single-sourced and unverified by independent reporting in this window, but if accurate, it carries significant implications. It would suggest that sanctions enforcement remains porous, that Iran retains substantial oil revenue even during an acute crisis. This materially reduces the economic leverage component of any U.S. coercive strategy toward Tehran and complicates the argument that maximum pressure economics are functioning as designed. 2 parallel developments signal a significant hardening of Poland's stance toward Ukraine. First, Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk demanded direct Warsaw participation in any Ukraine-Russia ceasefire or peace negotiations, warning that formats like E3 or E5 cannot speak for the entire European Union, and that Poland will not respect agreements reached without its involvement, according to the Islander News. A counterclaim from the same channel, unattributed and carrying limited analytical weight, asserts Poland and the EU will have no seat at any talks, likely reflecting a Russian framing. Separately, Telegram channel 2 Majors reports that Polish President Nabatieh declared Ukraine's EU accession a threat to Polish agriculture, pledging to protect Polish farmers in all related negotiations. This shift, from Ukraine's strongest EU advocate to a source of friction on both the security and economic tracks, represents a meaningful change in the diplomatic landscape. According to Italian-language Telegram channel Infodef Italy, a significant rupture has emerged between President Trump and Italian Prime Minister Meloni, rooted in Italy's decision to close its airspace to U.S. military aircraft during the Iran conflict. Trump reportedly mocked Meloni publicly. The Italian analysis notes this may paradoxically benefit Meloni domestically ahead of difficult 2027 elections, drawing a parallel to the political patterns seen with Hungary's Orbán and Spain's Sanchez, both of whom gained domestic support through public friction with Washington. The report also assesses that Meloni's break means the White House has effectively lost its last ideologically aligned interlocutor in Europe, with French right-wing parties and even Germany's AfD having distanced themselves from Trump. Italy's airspace denial during active U.S. operations represents a concrete NATO member constraint on U.S. force projection. Two security incidents in Nigeria warrant attention. First, according to Morningstar News, as reported by Breaking News Nigeria, 9 Christians were killed and 11 injured in a terrorist attack in the Kaduna area of northern Nigeria, a region with a persistent pattern of religiously targeted violence. No further corroborating details are available in this window. Second, armed bandits attacked the National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies in Kuru, Nigeria's premier national security and policy training institution. President Tinubu ordered security reinforcements at the facility. No casualty figures are available for the second incident. The willingness of armed groups to target a high-profile government institution signals a deteriorating security environment in north-central Nigeria. Sputnik Africa reports that Russia's RT Academy conducted media training workshops for over 300 journalists and media students in Tanzania this month, holding sessions at the State University of Zanzibar and the Russian Center for Science and Culture in Dar es Salaam. The report states that since its 2023 launch, the program has reached more than 7,000 participants across Africa. RT Academy representatives also met with management of leading Tanzanian television channels to discuss further cooperation. This represents continued and systematic Russian investment in the African media information environment, a long-term soft power effort with cumulative strategic implications for how regional audiences frame global events. Strategic assessment. First, the economic picture. The single most important economic signal in this digest is Iran's reported $1.6 billion in oil exports over 4 days, a figure from Middle East Spectator that, if accurate, demonstrates sanctions enforcement is failing to choke Iranian revenue during an active military crisis. This directly undermines the economic pressure pillar of U.S. strategy. Any deal Washington offers Tehran must now contend with the reality that Iran is not facing acute financial collapse. Oil markets should note that Iranian supply has not been structurally disrupted, limiting upward price pressure that a tighter enforcement regime would otherwise generate. On political stability, the diplomatic landscape around both the Iran and Ukraine files is fragmenting in ways that constrain Western coherence. Italy's airspace denial and the resulting Trump-Meloni rupture, as assessed by Infodef Italy, leaves Washington without an ideologically aligned European interlocutor at a critical moment. Simultaneously, Poland's hardening on both Ukraine peace talks and EU accession, with both PM Tusk and President Navracki staking out adversarial positions, signals that Kiev's most reliable EU advocate is under domestic political pressure that is reshaping its foreign policy. Both trends reduce the collective Western leverage available in any negotiation, and the wider geopolitical consequences. 3 escalation vectors demand close monitoring over the next 7 to 14 days. First, Zelensky's reported 1-week ultimatum to Lukashenko, currently single-sourced, expires within the forecast window. A Ukrainian cross-border strike into Belarus would represent a qualitative escalation with CSTO implications. Second, Iran's Lebanon precondition for any U.S. deal creates a hard linkage between 2 separate conflict tracks. Any Israeli military action in Lebanon now directly costs Washington diplomatic progress with Tehran. Third, the 6 consecutive IDF failures at Ali Al-Taher corroborated by Bint Jabal News, suggest Israeli ground operations in southern Lebanon face a durable stalemate at fortified positions, which will increase pressure on Israeli military planners to either escalate tactics or accept a negotiated limit. Watch for any U.S.-brokered Lebanon ceasefire signal as the key variable linking all three vectors. The common thread across today's brief is fragmentation of alliances, of sanctions regimes, and of diplomatic frameworks, and how each actor is calculating whether that fragmentation creates an opening or a trap. If you want this kind of structured open-source analysis delivered regularly, consider subscribing so you don't miss the next update. This brief is based on publicly available open-source information and is for educational and analytical purposes only.